what are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
Who's us?
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. You also find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth, where we strive to give you the truth about black wealth. And you can also find us anywhere that you get your streaming podcast, whether that be Spotify, iTunes, wherever that may be. You can find us at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Closing the Gap, The Truth. This is the podcast for you if you want to know more about your financial health and definitely to have it structured foundationally in God and in the Word of God and have an understanding of what God desires for you to do with what He blesses you with. How you doing today, Will?
Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored.
Amen, amen. We are gathered today on another righteous and holy day to come and tell the people the truth about black wealth. And we appreciate you and all that you do in this opportunity that you've given me to come to the people here with you to talk about various subjects. And this week we're going into Mother's Day on Sunday, and we want to make this the Mother's Day edition. And entitle this podcast today, A Mother's Love. A Mother's Love. And there's a song that when I was in 7th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. McCaskill, and he was a math teacher, and he always liked that blues song that said, talked about a mother and says like mom's apple pie. So sweet, sweet, sweet. And that's how, anytime I think about a mother and a mother's love, that's a core memory that I always go back to is when he said that. He would always quote that song. He loved that song. And so every time I hear the word a mother's love, that's what I think about. So what comes to your mind when you think about a mother's love?
Man, a mother's love, when that comes to my mind, is unconditional love. It's unwavering love. It's just the way a mama loves their children. I mean, it's like no other. That connection of, I guess, her carrying, her seed for 9 months, and that relationship that's and that bond that's built, during that course of time, is just something that can't be broken. Yeah. It's just something about the. You can smell your mama. It's just you don't smell daddy, but you can smell mama. It's just one of those things that I've been blessed to have a wonderful mother, and a mother that's taught me to dream and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And always made me. She told me from the beginning. She said, shoot for the stars, you land on the moon. Dream big. You can achieve it. And it's kind of crazy because me and my father probably a lot more. Realistic, but she brought that optimism there and it really made me think and believe a lot of times that I was better than what I was. And that's carried me a long way. And I have to, definitely, show my love and appreciation to her for that. I probably don't do that enough. But I definitely, know that, my dreaming came from her. Okay. My thinking big definitely came from her. My father always taught me, baby, be happy with what you got, be appreciative, be grateful, be thankful, and go to work. So he was going to, be the one that's going to instill the hard work in me. But, she the one that told me it's okay to dream. It's okay to, to shoot for those stars and land on that moon. It's okay to really go after, things that other people may see as unattainable. Yeah. Because just because it hadn't been done, that just means it's meant for you to do. So, I definitely have to give my mama a shout out because she's the reason, definitely why I'm here, why I'm taking those chances and why I have that faith, that unwavering faith, because she believed in me with unwavering faith and probably when I had doubt in myself. So I definitely, have experienced a mother's love.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I too attribute a lot of where I am to my mother as well. She led me, guided me, always prayed for me, prayed over me, right? And much like your mother, instilled in me that view that, hey, you can go and achieve more than what you think you can, right? Don't limit your mindset. Absolutely. Like, go strive, be all that God has created you to be. And the only way that you find that out is to try. And that's what my mother would instill in me and help me to see. You know, when I would be down and hurt and upset about things, my mother would always give me a better point of view on it. You know, help me be able to see it differently. Like, okay, like hold your head up, son, and look at it from this point of view, right? Much like how you said, a view of optimism.
Yes.
I would say is definitely what mother would give to me. And so I want to give a shout out to my mom as well. Thank you, Mom, for all that you have done for me, and you know how you have given me the tools to reach the goals that I have and to be in the place that I am. She is the one that, you know, of course, like you said, father definitely there, but we just, you know, give the credit to mother today. You know what I'm saying? And we'll do the Father's Day edition coming up next month.
Absolutely.
All right, but right now we're gonna give the mother the love that they deserve, because my mother would always be able to reroute my mindset.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Be down in the dumps, she's thinking bad, but she always able to reroute my mindset. And so with that in mind, and we here to tell the people the truth about Black Wealth. And so, what would you say, Will, when it comes to a mother, how does a mother impact our financial decisions based on your viewpoint of your history and experience in wealth management? What do you see for yourself and some of your clients, the impact of how a mother helps a person with their finances?
You know, mama think about everybody but her. You know, I can think about mama's a big cook. So my mom, of course, she's from the country, and she loves to cook. Cooking is her love language, you know, in a way. So, you know, but I never saw my mama eat. You know, growing up, I never saw my mama sit down and have a plate. It was always, of course, she made sure Dad had his plate. She made sure, you know, me, my brother, my sister, we had our plate, that we sat down and we got fed and we ate good. But I never remember seeing her sit down. And I remember asking her one time, I said, Mama, you know, when do you sit down and enjoy the meal? Because I get to enjoy these wonderful meals that you make for me every day. And I'm grateful and thankful for these wonderful meals that you continuously prepare for us. But I never saw her sit down and just enjoy the meal. And, you know, she said, well, you know, I grab a little bite here and there kind of as I go. You know, I'm like, well, that's really not, but when you get your nourishment, you're not actually eating a full plate. The way you make me sit down and eat these greens and these peas and these, you know, and these mashed potatoes and this smothered chicken and these pork chops, like, I'm getting a chance to savor and enjoy the entire meal together. I'm never seeing you do that. But she said, well, I get full, you know, seeing y'all full. You know, just kind of being in the midst of, you know, she didn't need as much to be satisfied. So, you know, just always seeing that, it's just always, you know, showed me how giving, you know, she was. I remember I always had friends and, you know, teammates and my father's, you know, players always at my house, and everybody knew if they needed something to eat, they could always show up. But even when I got to college and I was playing football, I would have coaches and teammates coming to me after the game saying, man, did your mama bring in the ribs? You know, did she bring some food up? Because she would literally bring a spread, and she would serve everybody. I mean, she would bring a pan of macaroni and cheese, a pan of greens, a pan of chicken, a pan of steaks. And I'm like, we would have a spread in my room, and almost the entire football team would come through, and she would feed everybody, coaches included. And I'm just, and to this day, I never saw her sit down and partake in the food herself. So just her giving nature, always putting us first, making sure that, you know, we had the best of everything, making sure that she was, you know, feeding us, clothing us, making sure that we had, you know, the good shoes. You know, Dad was gonna make sure we had shoes, but she was gonna make sure we got the shoes that we wanted. You know, Dad was gonna make sure that we had clothes, but she was gonna make sure that we had the clothes that we wanted. You know, Dad was saying, look, you just need something to cover your body. She was saying, okay, baby, I know you want to go to school and you want to have the Tommy Hilfiger on like people was wearing back in the day. You know, you want to have the polo on. You don't want the off-brand polo. You want the polo. Daddy said it's the same horse on the shirt. I said, Daddy, but it's not the same. You know, I'm not getting treated the same at school when I put this one on versus putting that one on. And Mama would always make sure that I had the best of everything, you know, regardless of what situation it put her in. You know, so I had to be grateful and thankful for that, because, you know, it just taught me the lesson of Mama always putting others first. You know, always making sure that others were taken care of, you know, and learning that, you know, of course, from a financial standpoint, you know, that role and responsibility now that I have as a parent, it's bled over to how I operate, making sure that I take care of my kids. I have a mandatory deposit that hits my kids' accounts every week.
Okay.
I make sure that deposit is set and money is in the account to fund their accounts before I make sure money is in my accounts to fund mine. You know, it's just those habits and those that precedent that she set to always make sure, because your kids don't need to feel what you going through. It's your responsibility to put them in the best situation for success the way she put me in the best situation of success. Now, of course, you know, as I've grown and learned that, you know, mom and dad went through situations the same way me and my wife went through situations, and the same way people go through things financially. Nobody's immune to struggle in tough times, you know. But regardless of whatever tough times my parents may have went through, I never felt those tough times. You know, so just from a financial standpoint, learning that, hey, I got to make sure that I keep the main thing, and the kids in the family are the main thing. The same way my mama made me and my sister, my brother, the first priority in her life.
Wow, that's good. That's good. So, as you said that, I'm thinking about Proverbs 31, you know, and how it describes that type of woman and wife and this virtuous woman. And in verse 27, it talks about how she looketh well to her household and the ways of her household, and doesn't eat the bread of idleness. Right? And as you describe your mother being one that made sure she took care of everybody and made sure that everybody else ate and had, and that is bled over into the way that you conduct yourself as a man of the household, and making sure that your children have before you even have. And that's the thing that we want listeners to know about. You know, the truth about Black Wealth is we've made it here off of the backs of our mothers, right? Our mothers managing households. And when it comes to the management of a household, too many times we've relegated that to just the food, you know what I'm saying, the clothes, right? While that is important, but what we realize with the food and the clothes is, how do you acquire those things?
Absolutely.
You know, so it takes money, it takes sacrifice to get those things now. In previous years, you know, before money was the way that everything was bought per se, it was through the work, right? And so, you know, even now with the money there, the mother is the one that keeps that balance, you know, and making sure that, hey, okay, what is it going to take for this household to be able to have not only what they need, but also, as you said, what they want. Absolutely. You know, not just the shirt with the horse on it, but that is the actual polo. Yes. You know what I'm saying? There, right? And making sure they're dressed. So we appreciate our mothers and doing that. And we want to encourage the mothers of the day to take that time and make that type of sacrifice for your family as well. And understand that sons like myself and Mr. Hamilton and your daughters, we are looking to our mothers for that nurture. We're looking to our mothers for that type of guidance of caring for the household and managing things in that particular way, and giving us this optimistic view. And I think that that's why we try to make sure that we take care of mama.
Absolutely.
Because mama took care of us. So with that in mind, what we need to, even now, you know, in our generation and others, we have to care for our parents as they get older.
Absolutely.
Right? And so as we think about that, we need to think about, you know, long-term care plans.
Absolutely.
To take care of mother. So in that vein, Will, can you give us some tidbits, some ideas, and some things from your vantage point of what do we need to do with our finances to continue to take care of our mothers as they grow old?
Well, you know, the first thing that we can do is making sure that, you know, mama had a plan too. You know, we've been, you know, preaching, of course, you know, plan. If you don't plan to fail, but you do fail to plan. So, you know, when you know better, we can do better. Your mother has blessed us with an opportunity. My mother put me in a situation to be able to go further and do more, and I've acquired knowledge in this area. It would only be right that one of the first things that I did in my career when I started working was go back to my parents and make sure that they had some type of long-term care protection. Well, the reason why I did that was because I looked at the situation. I'm the oldest of 3 children. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. I said, well, if something were to happen to my parents and they were going to need care, and my mom's going to need care, who's probably going to be the person responsible for making sure that they have that care? Well, that's going to fall back on me in some way, shape, form, or fashion. My sister lives hours away out in Dallas, Texas, and my brother's another hour and a half north of me. I'm the closest one to them, in Montgomery, Alabama. So I'm going to be the one that's on call. And I need to make sure that, mama has the care that she gave me. So making sure that the assets that my parents have worked for, making sure that they have their ducks in a row. So sitting down with my parents, saying, hey, mom, dad, what is the plan? What do you have in place? If you need some type of care, have you addressed the situation? Have we looked at the costs of that care in the area? Because costs are different in every area for different types of care. I watched this and, I had a front row seat of watching my father take care of his mother. My father was the baby boy of, for his mother. So I saw a mother's love up close and personal. And I saw the toll that it took on him in being there, seeing his mother in her latter years. But I also know the gratification that he's able to carry with him to this day of knowing that he was able to be there to help mama take care of herself. Because grandmama had already took care of a lot of necessities. She already had her plot and already pre-planned for the funeral. Grandmama had took care of everything. So daddy didn't have a lot to worry about. She had a separate savings account to cover any unexpected cost. So my father wouldn't have had to come out of pocket for that. So mama had did some planning. Grandmama had a separate account to cover some of those long-term care expenses when she needed some in-home health care in her latter days. She was able to put herself in a position because of her planning, because of her saving, and making sure that, guess what, you're not a burden to your family. It's not that maybe your kids may not want to take care of you, but how do you know if your kids are going to be in a position to take care of you? I want to do a lot of things in life, but sometimes I can't do them until I'm in the position where I'm capable and able to do them. Well, unfortunately, when you look at life, we don't get to determine when things happen. Everything is on God's time. And unfortunately, too many of us are operating on our time. And we're thinking that, well, this is going to happen at this point in time. I know it won't happen anytime soon. And God said, hold on, I got something for you. He brings it up when you can least expect it. And honestly, usually things happen when you can least afford it to happen. So with the planning that my grandmother did, with the plan that I was able to come back and help, my mother with, knowing now my mama has long-term care. My mom has, life insurance. She has retirement plans. She has her investments and things in order. She has an income plan. So regardless of what takes place with my father, my mom has income that she can't outlive for the rest of her life that would take care of her and secure her. So in regardless of what happens, nursing home, in-home health care, we plan and prepared so that we know who's going to be there to take care of mama. I'm going to be able to spend time at my discretion. My siblings will be able to come in and spend time at their discretion. But we have professional help that will be available due to the saving and plan implementation that we have to come in and help take care of mama, because there are some things that we're not qualified to do. I'm not qualified to, look at certain medication and figure out what should be taken first. I'm not qualified to do physical therapy if mama needs some kind of physical therapy. We've all been in those situations, seeing that, people have strokes and people have issues as they get older in life. They need a little bit of care and they need a little bit of tender loving that you're not trained to provide. So having a plan in place to make sure that you have that care in place. There are things available to moms that, were put in place specifically for homemakers years ago that a lot of people don't even know about. The Social Security system actually has it set up to where you can be, if you were a housewife, so to speak, and you took care of the home and the husband went out and earned the bread, so to speak, and you did that for 30, 40 years, well, guess what? Most women don't even realize they actually can draw off of that husband's Social Security for a check and a payment to be able to help maintain themselves. So we want to make sure that we understand and we know what is out there and what is available to us that we worked for, because mother's taking care of us since we were brought into this world. We want to make sure we take care of them. We'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I'm your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And today, this Mother's Day edition of Mother's Love, we're talking to Mama today, and we're talking about Mama and all the love that Mother has shown us and how our mother's love has indeed helped us to become who we are right now. And how a mother's giving spirit has helped us in managing our finances and managing our life. So you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial, and also you find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Also, you can find us anywhere that you get your streaming podcast, whether that be Spotify or iTunes, wherever that may be, Apple Music. You can look us up, Closing the Gap, The Truth. This is the podcast for you to talk about all things finance and spirituality. So we like to keep things grounded. We like to lead our people in the right direction and give you some tools that you can use. And today we're talking about our mother. We talked about how we can take care of mother. We talked about the impact that our mothers have on us and the plans that mothers have, long-term care and things of that nature thus far. And so now as we continue to move forward and talking about how those mothers care for the household and the impact that the mothers have on us, I want to go back to that optimistic view that mothers give us, right? Because I think that's important in all aspects of life,
Absolutely.
Right? Because having the right viewpoint when you go into any endeavor in life definitely determines your achievement level in what you do, right? And I believe that correlates directly into our spiritual lives.
Absolutely.
And into our financial lives. And I say that because when it comes to our spiritual lives, we have a God that we don't see physically every day. So you have to have the optimism that God does exist. And I believe that a mother instills that greatly into sons and daughters, those believing mothers that pray over their children, pray over their households, and that they always believe that anything is possible, and that while things may not be going right, they still believe that it can turn around at any moment.
At any moment.
At any moment, right? So spiritually, that's key for us, right? Because we're gonna have trouble in this world, but the direction that my mother especially led the household was that, hey, while things may not be going good, God can make the change for us. And so we want you all, our listening audience, to realize that as well, that the optimistic view of mothers is key for our survival in society. Because as we watch the news in this current time that we are in 2025, there's constant flux.
Absolutely.
Right? With our current administration, in Washington, D.C., in the White House, and then also in some of our state houses and in local elections, there's always flux, right? And that sometimes can get you down and cause you not to want to even have hope and think that you can make it to the next day. But we need to rely on the view of a mother that says, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep my hope in God regardless of what is going on. I'm going to keep on praying because I know that my prayers avail much, because God can turn this thing around at any moment. And so that's where we need to keep our minds spiritually, but also financially, right? While we're in this current climate, also financially, we can get into a moment of despair.
Absolutely.
You see the fluctuation of your 401k. You see the fluctuation of any of your investments. You see right now, even with student loans, there are some things that are coming down from that, right? And that can cause you to have a pessimistic view. But we thank God for mothers going through what they've gone through and exemplifying hope and optimism, because that's what we need right now is in this financial time is keep an optimistic view like mothers have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as we talk about, mothers, I'm replaying, a lot of things that have happened throughout the course of my life, and what my mother has meant to me, and how she's affected me in ways that, I didn't even realize, and truly, I have to give my mother a lot of credit, because she is the reason why I do have the relationship with Christ that I do. She made us grow up in the church. It wasn't a choice. Dad might have let me sleep in a couple times. He wasn't as necessarily, rooted in the word necessarily as mama was. And like I said, that praying mother, she definitely kept us and my siblings in church, more than we wanted to be. And she challenged us while we were in church. So it wasn't just, I'm taking you to church. You're going to be actively involved in church. So all those things that I didn't want to do as a kid, because me being just a shy kid, and if you ask me what I want to do, all I want to do is play basketball and football. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to play sports. And my dad has been fine with that. He gonna sit in the back. I'm gonna sit in the back next to him. And mama said, come here. You see that usher boy, you gonna join that usher boy. You see that choir, you gonna join that choir. You see that youth department, you gonna join that youth department. You're not just gonna join, you're going to be a leader in that department. So before I was, graduating high school, I was used to being youth department president, the usher board president. I'm speaking on, Youth Sunday, and I'm going to be the MC of service. I'm going to do this and do that. And all along, not realizing the things that were being built in me. I was being prepared without knowing I was being prepared. She was getting me comfortable being uncomfortable, having to be in front of people and speaking and doing different things. And it's ironic, I think about the positions that I was put in as a child. I remember speaking at a funeral, and I couldn't have been no more than 10, 11 years old. And I think about some of the things, the positions I was in, I said, well, I probably shouldn't have been the one speaking, but because I was the leader in this particular position, and that was a young man who unfortunately had passed away, at the church at the time. And, I had to speak because that young man actually had been a part of the usher board. And me being the president of the usher board at that time, we ended up, saying something to the family, and I'm the one that had to be there to deliver that message. And I think back to those kind of things of getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, being put in tough situations, not knowing that I was being prepared to be a leader, but that's the things that my mother did. She put me in those uncomfortable positions, but it was all to challenge me and to grow me, to grow my faith, to grow my, my spirituality, to grow my, my toughness, in a way. She was growing toughness in me in a different way than what my father was growing in me, on the football field, on the basketball court. But it was a toughness that I was going to need in life, because that's the toughness we need to make sure we make it, because I had to learn to turn who to turn to when I needed more toughness. You got to be able to turn to Christ to get that toughness that you need to survive this world. That the toughness my father provided for me and helped me get on the football field and the basketball court. Well, that was great when I was participating in those particular sports. But when life hits you and knock you down, you need a hand that you can reach up to, that is reaching back down to you, that can pick you up, that is always there and always around. So I have to, thank my mother for that. But, from a professional standpoint, I've seen mothers give themselves into debt on far too many occasions because of that same love that they'll give their last. Well, we don't want mama to give her last. If mama can't take care of herself, then mama can't take care of you. That's going to only last for so long. And unfortunately, I've seen, some of our greatest strengths almost turn around and be our greatest weaknesses. So that mother's love that's unconditional, that would give to their children until they don't have anything else to give, well, who stops and thinks about what kind of position you put mama in? Well, how about you just do right from the beginning and don't put yourself in a position where you got to go to mama for certain things. And mama got to bail you out of certain situations because you didn't follow mama's instructions. Like I said, honor thy mother and thy father. and the days shall be longer on this earth. Now, I want all the days I can get.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to make sure I honor my mother and my father, because I want to enjoy a long life by following God's word. So, you know, me understanding that and thinking about that and seeing that firsthand on far too many occasions, you know, mothers who did the right thing and saved into their retirement accounts, their 401ks, and get to a position where now they're having to drain those accounts because they're helping grown children that have not taken personal accountability. Now, mama don't have no problem helping you. Mama gonna do everything she can to help you. She's going to give her last, but we have to take some personal accountability and make sure that we start to do our own financial planning as we get older and we start working. So that's why when you hear me say, people ask me, well, Mr. Hamilton, when do you need to get a financial advisor? The day you start working. Because the day you start working, you need to be preparing yourself not to be dependent on anybody else. Now, it's great to be able to go to mama, and mama's going to be there and give you everything she got and then some, and she going to give you what she ain't got. And that's where we've heard the unfortunate stories of mama put up the house to help so-and-so. Or, you know, mama lost the house trying to help so-and-so. Or mama don't have any money to pay her light bill and to pay for groceries because she spent it all helping so-and-so. Well, how about we stop putting mama in a situation where she has to give everything she had and then some, because mama's going to give it, because mama don't know no other way. Mama's going to be there. She's going to believe. Mama sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. See, you know, daddy, you know, he puts hard work in you. You know, he cultivates what's in you. But mama actually is the one that's instilling it, helping you to believe that you can achieve it. See, now, daddy gonna help bring it out. So through the hard work, say, look at, we're gonna get to work, we're gonna develop it, we're gonna cultivate it, but mama's the one that helps you see that, you know what, I might be able to do this. And I was, you know, I'm a witness to this. You know, I'm a witness to being able to see, you know, of living a life where mama saw more in me than I saw in myself. And she instilled certain things in me and put me in positions where you are a leader. I didn't think I was a leader. I was happy not being a leader. I just wanted to play the background. She said, no. You're a leader. I need you to do this. You're going to do this. Now, it may have been against what I wanted to do, but it was for the greater good in me and my life. And that's where we need those mothers, because mama can challenge you and still believe in you. When daddy challenges you, you want to fight back. We're fighting back against dad, especially as a man, as a boy. You know, we're fighting back against dad. It's a different relationship. But when mama believes in you, it gives you an extra, like, man, if mama believes in me, then I can believe in me. And it gives you a different sense of motivation. And, you know, thinking about the love that your mother gave her children should make you want to do better and not put her in a situation where she's giving herself into debt, because unfortunately, I've seen it on far too many occasions where, you know, mama has given her last to help her children, and nobody's thinking about the situation that is putting mama in and how she's going to be able to enjoy her life, because she's earned the right to enjoy her life. She's raised you and done everything she's supposed to do with you. Well, the reward is supposed to be now you being a blessing to her. Her being able to just see you have taken that knowledge and that wisdom that she's provided to go be better. Because that's all mama want to do. Mama want to be able to look at her baby up on stage and say, that's my baby. That's all she wants to do. She don't want nothing from you. She just want to know that you've taken the love that she's giving you and you've utilized it to make yourself better and make the world better. And with that being said, we want to make sure that we're doing the same, you know, by her, and doing right by her by financially planning and hopefully being a blessing to her.
Mother. Yeah. Taking care of mother the way the mother has taken care of us. Right. And I think that we too many times, because we fail to plan, then we feel like that's not possible.
Absolutely.
You know, but when we start doing more planning, then we can make these things possible, because all things are possible through Christ, who strengthens us, right? We can achieve any of these things if we first put our foundational belief in God through Jesus Christ, and then write out that plan, that financial plan, and also that family plan, right, of love and care. You know, a family care plan of, okay, how are we going to take care of mother? Who's going to take care of this person in the family, right? I had a conversation just this past week with one of my clients who, just recently lost his mother. And through the discussion and what he shared with me was that his mother had already communicated to them about what she wanted and how she wanted things done with what she had, her possessions, and then also about the rest of them as children, right? And he said that, that was giving him some comfort in the midst of the loss. Like the loss hurts, but the fact that his mother had communicated the plan and he and his siblings listened and they adhered to the plan. And he said that they were going to honor their mother's plans to make sure that they brought them to fruition, right? And so that's so great. It was in the midst of the dark cloud that is surrounding him, there was silver lining to the fact that mother had loved me, mother had shared these stories with me, and then mother had a plan. And you know what? I'm going to execute mother's plan. And when our mothers give us a plan and we strive to execute it, then what that also does for us is reignites the fire within us to have a plan for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And to have a plan for our family and to make sure that we execute it right. And where does that come from? Well, that comes from the fact that God has a plan for each one of us.
Absolutely.
Right? God knows each one of us by name. God knows the hairs on our head. God knows our thoughts before we even think them. And so God has a plan for us. And God is the one that has blessed us to have the life that we have through the mother that we have or had. And we should honor God by honoring our mother and our father.
Absolutely.
The Bible says that is the first commandment with promise. Right? Why? Because as you stated it earlier, the Bible says honor thy mother and father. Why? So that your days can be long.
Yes.
Right? So that's the first commandment that has a promise to it. And God provided that as the first promised commandment. So that's why we come today and honor our mothers, because we want our days. I want my days to be long.
Absolutely.
No, you want your days to be long, right? I enjoy this life that God has provided us the opportunity to live. And I'm thankful that, God allowed me to be able to come through the mother that I have. And so I'm appreciative of that. And so we need to continue to love our mothers, care for them, let them know that we love them. And then also we let them know how we love them by things that we do.
Absolutely.
Right? The actions that we take. That now, as I come into a better financial situation, I strive to keep my family in a good situation, but then also ensure that my mother is taken care of as well. And managing these resources that God has blessed us with. And the greatest resource that we have is our family, is a mother, is a father,
Absolutely.
is actually life itself, right? And I know that we're here and we're talking about the truth about black wealth, but you can't have any type of wealth unless you, first of all, take care of your health as a person and realize that you got here to be able to get wealth through your mother, right? I don't know of anybody that is alive that just got here by happenstance and didn't come through a mother, right? You know what I'm saying? Everybody did, even Jesus
Christ. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And even while Jesus was here, in that he loved his mother, and on his way out, he told his brother, behold your mother, you know what I'm saying? Take care of her, love her, and manage her, you know what I'm saying? And make sure that she is well. I'm going, and her heart is hurt, but I need you to be there with her in this time. And so we thank you, mothers, and we want everybody that we know that there are some that don't have their mothers right now, right? And we sympathize and empathize with those of you that have lost your mothers, or you don't have the best relationship with your mothers, but it's still good to honor them, regardless of how bad or how the relationship may be.
Yes.
Right? Because I dare say that the way that you have your mindset set in regards to your mother also impacts your health and your wealth of where you are, right? Because you have to have a spirit of forgiveness to be able to grow. And nobody can grow holding on to pains of the past. But we must continue. The only way we can grow spiritually is to be able to have a spirit of forgiveness. The only way that we can grow in our health is to let go of some things that are harming us. And the only way that we can grow financially is to let go of some of our bad financial practices of the past so that we can grow and learn something new and move forward in life. And we'll see you back shortly after this commercial break. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you are tuned in once again to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Closing the Gap, The Truth on YouTube. And then also you can find us on anywhere that you get your streaming podcasts, whether that be Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. You can find us at Closing the Gap, where we strive to tell you the truth about black wealth. And you are tuned in today on the Mother's Day edition of Mother's Love. We've been talking today, Wilbert, about how our mothers have given us this optimistic view and how we can care for our mothers and the impact that our mothers have had on us spiritually and on how we take care of our finances, right? And how we have structured our households. And so we want to also just talk about, we have households. Absolutely. And when we talk about yourself and myself having household, meaning that we have wives, right? And so our wives are mothers as well now within our household. They are the mothers to our children, right? Absolutely. That are providing that mother's love to our children. So we want to also, while we are talking about our mothers, we want to also give credit and appreciation to our wives as the mothers in our household for our children, because God has allowed us to have them, and they have us, and made a choice and put us together and have allowed us to have some children and for them to be mothers and be the mothers in our household, to take care of our kids, to lead and guide them in that same way that our mothers have done for us. And so I want to take the pause and tell my wife, I love you and I appreciate your motherly skills in our household as well.
Absolutely. So I definitely got to second that motion.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, and I'm gonna bring it up and kind of bring it a little closer to home. And in the planning process, we talked about a lot of different things as far as having our personal financial plans and having a plan for mama and and in some kind of way we left out the plan for our wives. We want to make sure that we have their plan in place, and their plan is our plan.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of times that, and we all know the statistics on women outliving men, and and making sure that you have that successful financial plan is essential because we don't want the finances to die with daddy. We want mama to be able to live consistently and in the same way, in the same vein. And I've heard on far too many occasions, I've sat with people in my office and, and I've heard men say, man, I ain't leaving all my money, for she can go enjoy life with some other man. And my statement to them is always, well, if you leave enough money to your wife, she ain't got to get no other man. She'll be in a good situation where she can take her time and she can sit back and relax and she can enjoy, the fruits of the labor that you've left her. But, unfortunately, 75% of women remarry because of money, because of financial distress, because there was no plan in place, because we didn't leave them in a situation where mama had enough to be able to survive. So she ends on taking on additional help that she may not have taken on for those particular purposes. She needs financial help, and she's omitting maybe the spiritual help, maybe the support, maybe the love part is not there because she's saying, I need help with the bills. So if you have a plan in place to make sure you take care of mama, now mama's in a situation where she can strictly focus on taking care of, your kids and herself, and making sure she gets back on solid ground and not having to rush the process because she has some financial stress and turmoil that she can't tackle on her own. So those are the things that we have to think about, that, those uncomfortable conversations that we never want to have. And, if something were to happen to you, what situation are you leaving your wife in? Most people don't think about, that's that enough, honestly. They think about, well, if something happened to me, well, she'll be able to pay off the house. Well, she still got to live in the house. Your kids are still going to be in the house. So there's a lot more that goes on and goes into, the planning process than making sure she just keeps the house. She may be in a situation where if you don't leave anything, she got to sell the house and even if you paid off the house, because she needs the resource and she got to downsize. Well, don't you want your family to have the same lifestyle that they have with you and without you?
That's right.
You don't want to change the lifestyles of your sons and your daughters because you fail to plan. So those are the things that we have to take into account, and making sure that we have the healthcare director for mama, making sure we have a power of attorney for mama, because if we go first, and statistics show that usually the male precedes the woman in passing, and mama's still here, still being the pillar of the family. We need to make sure that mama has power of attorney, mama has healthcare director, because we're making sure that we have it for her and she's it for us, but we got to make sure that somebody is it for her too. So if it's not going to be us, then it needs to be a child, a sibling, a loved one, somebody close to us that needs to be over her healthcare directive, over her power of attorney, making sure that we have, her listed in the trust, making sure mama know where the documents are. I can speak to this situation firsthand of the changing of the guard when my mother's father passed, from down in the country. They own a whole bunch of land. And this is a story that we've seen on far too many occasions happen, I'm sure, in our community. So, they own, hundreds of acres down there in Wilcox County. Granddaddy passes away. And they asked grandmama, do you know where all the paperwork at? Do you know where the deeds are for the land? And grandmama didn't know where everything was. There was unwritten rules back then where, you didn't ask certain questions. Grandmama knew that granddaddy was taking care of it. And she just assumed that it was going to always work out. Well, unfortunately, granddaddy passes away. And things weren't properly deeded. Things weren't properly titled. You didn't have the documentation. So what happens to the land? We've lost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres in this country because we did not have any planning in place. Nobody planned for mama. Nobody planned for grandmama. So unfortunately, people passed away. We didn't have the records in place. We didn't have the transition, protection in place. There was no trust in place to make sure that the land stayed in the family. So all of a sudden, we have to go to court and fight for things that have been rightfully ours. Granddaddy bought the land. He had the deed, but don't nobody know where
it is.
And unfortunately and conveniently, in far too many cases, especially in these small towns, there was an inopportune fire that happened down at the county commission or, down at the courthouse. And these records were so-called lost. And everything burnt down and nobody knows what happened. And now all of a sudden, they are just coming back and taking the land that has been rightfully ours, that, granddaddy worked in them fields for years and years and years. My mom and aunts and uncles worked in them fields for years and years and years. But now because of no planning and no preparation for a transition, we lose all this valuable land that was once ours that we literally slaved over.
Literally.
So we have to make sure that the planning is taking place. The conversations are taking place. These were the taboo topics, in our community. You don't ask granddaddy about his stuff. Grandmama was quiet when it came to asking granddaddy about the business of the family. Granddaddy took care of the business of the family. And grandmama took care of the children. She took care of the kids. She took care of the home. She made sure they were fed and clothed, and made sure that when he brought that seed and that harvest back in the house, she made sure, hey, that corn was shucked, them peas was picked. She made sure she took what was useful from that hog and made everything from pig ear, pig feet, crackling cornbread, you name it. She took that pig and cooked it from head to toe and utilized it. It made it work for us, but she never asked Granddaddy, what about the paperwork? Because it just wasn't something that was done.
Right.
We always were taught that, hey, you know what? You don't ask certain stuff. And these are the things that need to be talked about. We need to have those round table discussions. Your kids need to know when you get to a certain age, parents, you need to talk to your kids about what your wishes are, what the plans are. Because if we don't know what your wishes and what your plans are, then we can only operate based on our own.
Yeah.
And those things may be totally different from what you would have wanted. And just having it verbally is not good enough. We got to put it in black and white. We got to write it down and make it plain. So not just telling, mama, don't just tell your kids what you want to happen. Sit down with somebody, a professional. Go see your financial advisor. Go see your attorney and make sure you draw up some paperwork to make sure that house is passed down and deeded to the right individual that's not going to get rid of and sell it for pennies on the dollar. Because you want to make sure you maintain, and everybody has things they want to do. If you ask grandmama what she wants to happen for a house, well, baby, I want to keep it in the family, so somebody always got a place to call home. I remember a time when I would go to my grandmother's house in Montgomery, Alabama, and it would always be somebody at that house that we had no clue who they was. We like, why is grandmama always, she took care of people like people take care of stray cats. She was always taking somebody in that we didn't know. And I'm like, grandma, why you got these folks in your house? But that was grandmama just taking care of people.
That's right.
Somebody was in need, so they knew they could always come to her. If they needed a meal, she would provide a meal for them. If they needed a roof over the head, she would provide a roof over the head for them. And she would do all she could to help people. Now, that's why we got to make sure that grandmama got her paperwork together because she's giving all she had. But unfortunately, we don't know what we don't know. So somebody has to educate grandmama and help her say, grandmama, we love you. We want to see this home stay in the family and still do with it what you've done with it. Whether you turn that home into a group home, whether you turn that home into a nursing facility, whatever you do with the home, whether it just stays in the family and is a place that you can always go to for somebody that's in the family, that's in the stress. Because I don't care who you are. You live in a big enough family, somebody gonna always need some help.
Yeah. Most definitely. Everybody does. We all got here, through somebody helping us. And as we talk about today, a mother's love, it was most times, a lot of times, that our mothers have helped us get to where we are.
Absolutely.
Whether they did it directly or indirectly, right? Because there are times that there are some households that are structured well, right? Where the mother is there and is the leadership and the guidance. And sometimes there are households where the mothers are not there like that. And then we still are able to achieve things that we achieve because of those failures, because of those faults. We decide to press through that and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to reach a certain status in spite of this situation, right? And that reminds me of what you said going through, this as well. In Proverbs 29 and verse 18, and the first part of that says, where there is no vision, the people perish, right? And so you have to have a vision, and most times our mothers gave us a vision, right? And in situations where mothers didn't, then I believe that God intervenes in those times and provides vision for us to be able to transcend our situation. And that's why we give mothers kudos in this Mother's Day edition, is because the mother birthed us, gave us our ways in, but then our vision and where we are came from God. And as you talked about, in knowing where everything is and having these conversations, I do believe that that's why it's important to pray first and foremost, so that God can lead and guide you into the right conversations you need to have in your family. everybody's family is different. Everybody's family has a different structure.
Yes.
Everybody's family has a different part of ownership. But what you said, Wilbert, is no matter how our families are structured, somebody within that family is going to come in need at some
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely.
And so we have to, first of all, pray. Second of all, write down the things that we do know about our family and things that we have. And then also communicate that within the family.
Yes.
Right? The thing about mothers is that, as you said, they'll take in almost like stray cats. Like whoever said that they was family, hey, come on in, baby. We're gonna take care of you, right? And then they were gonna go and find whatever they could to care for that person in that moment, right? As you said with the hog analogy, the pig analogy, hey, from the rooter to the tutor,
Yes.
if everybody needs to eat, we're gonna find a way to cook this hog so that everybody can have. And we need to have, as we go today, what we're trying to impress upon you all is, you need to have that same spirit with your finances. That don't complain about what you don't have, but take the time to take what you have and say that, based on my family structure right now, I am going to take what I have and I am going to do the most with it. I'm going to stretch it out to where it's going to be able to feed and take care of the basic necessities for everybody that I can take care of in my family. That's what we want you to do when we talk about a mother's love, is take that lesson, right? The lesson of being a visionary, a lesson of being optimistic, that while I don't have everything like I want it, while I may not be where I want to be, that if I put down a plan on paper and I pray over that plan, then God will lead me to bring that plan to fruition. Why? Because God is one that answers prayers. God is one that sees and knows our needs and knows our thoughts before we can even think them. And if we are willing to put down a plan and write down a vision, then guess what? The scripture said, where there is no vision, people perish.
Yes.
So if there is a vision, then that means that you're going to prosper.
Yes.
And we want you above all things to prosper and be in good physical health, and be in good spiritual health, and be in good financial health. I want to say that again, Will. I kind of like that. We want everybody to write the vision so that you won't perish, so that you can prosper, and your prosperity be found in spiritual health, physical health, and financial health. Why is that? Well, because that's what we believe that God desires for you. That's why I'm here. That's why Wilbert is here. That's why Hamilton Wealth Advisors exists, is because a mother's love gave him the optimism to see what he did not even see, to become what he did not know that he could become, to be what God desired for him to be. That's the same thing for me, that a mother's love empowered me to become what I am now, and I didn't even know that I could become it. My grandmother instilled these things in me. On both sides, I would stay with my grandmothers from my father's side, and my great-grandmother and grandmother on my mother's side, and then my mother, on that side, my aunts would, give me hope and help me to be able to see things that I didn't see. And so whether you have a mother today or not, we want to impart this wisdom from our mothers on you, is that take the time and pray and allow God to give you the vision for where you need to be and where you need to go. Have the conversations within your household and your family to get things in order. Too many times we fail because we're out of order. That's basically what you were saying, Will, but is that when we don't know where everything is because our houses are not in order.
Absolutely.
We hadn't taken that time to put everything in place. We hadn't taken that time to have those hard conversations, to sit down at the table together and not just talk about what everybody else is doing in the world, not just talk about what's going on the news or social media. It's easy for us to sit down and talk about, and call the president a fool, or call the president out of his name, and talk about all the things that he's doing and how wrong it is and all that. Well, but that's not what's going to cause us to perish. What's going to cause us to perish is our lack of vision and conversation, and the conversation that we are not having within our own household.
Which leads to the lack of planning.
That's it. That's
No
it.
communication.
No communication.
No plan.
Sit down and have a conversation with each other. Go ahead.
Well, we have to, and like I said, and wrapping up this Mother's Day edition of A Mother's Love, we just want to say, thank you to all the mothers for all the love that you give the world. We wouldn't be here without you. We want to continue to show our support, for the mothers that we have, for all the mothers that are out there, the soon-to-be mothers, the mothers to come, and we want to continue to educate and uplift, and continue to share this information. We're here, because of you. We have a voice because you allow us to have a voice. So we want to continue to uplift and build our community and help close the wealth gap in this community. The only way we can do that is by continually communicating with you and you sharing this with somebody else. See you next time.